This is the There Is Another Way podcast from spencerbruce.com. Making life work as a creative. Hello and welcome to this week's There Is Another Way podcast. I hope you are all doing extremely well in these strange and difficult times. This week, I am really pleased to say that we have another fantastic guest interview with the amazing Tristan Noon, TV composer, orchestrator, copyist, author. Tristan has an amazing portfolio of work, well worth checking out his website. There will be links in the box below and, of course, at the end of the podcast. Anyway, stay tuned and check out the chat with Tristan. Hello, everyone. I'm really privileged and honoured to have Tristan Noon on the show today. Hi, Tristan. How are you doing?
Hey, Neil. Thanks for having me.
So, as you heard in the introduction, Tristan is a composer, orchestrator, does music copying, and also an author. You've just got a book just come out. How's that going?
Yeah, it's been really good. I've been really kind of taken aback by the sales, and it's just really nice that people have shown support and been buying, and it's gone global now, which is really nice.
Well, it's a really good book, and one of the things that really I found really interesting about it is, what it's going to sound a bit weird, was a section on finance, which I guess a lot of books tend to shy away from, but I found it really useful, and it was actually some things in there I was like, I need to look into that. But do you want to just give us a little bit about what the book's about? And
yeah, I mean, you know, kind of when I was first thinking about ideas to write the book, there were kind of sections in my head that I thought nobody's covered this sort of thing before. You know, as far as I'm aware, nobody's covered it. So, you know, I always try and look at it from the perspective of, if I was starting out today, what are the kind of things that I would want to know, and what are the kind of things that get left out and nobody touches on? And those sorts of things were finances, like starting a business. The very first time, you know, you're kind of setting up your own business as a sole trader, and you're kind of left in the dark, really. You know, nobody really knows what they're doing. You're kind of just fumbling around. You don't know what sort of you know, things you can claim for. You don't really know much about tax and about VAT and payment on account and all that sort of thing. So I really wanted to cover those sorts of areas.
What I found was really good. Sorry, I should also add the book is called Notes to Notes. I'll put some links in the description so everyone wants to go and check it out. I think it's a really good book. The sections on freelancing and some of the things about well-being as well, just applicable to any freelance activity. Maybe it is a little bit music focused towards the most of it. But I found I keep going back to that section on finance, because you put it across in quite a straightforward way, in the sense that it was easy to read. Sometimes it's really easy to get lost in some of these things, particularly when you're starting out. And I think you really nailed on the head, like, there's more to this that you can look at, but these are things you can just do straight away. And I found it really helpful, and I've been doing this for a long time.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I really just wanted to make it simple. So I'm glad you said that, because you know, from a personal point of view, if I'm reading something and it takes me 30 pages to say what could have been said in half a page, then to me that's a waste of my time. So I'd rather, you know, get straight to the point and make it clear and easy to understand. And you know, hopefully that's been achieved.
Yeah, and also I found that the gear section also really good, because again, that's another area where, you know, you could go on for years talking about bits, but I think you really picked a few items. I think you were just said these are really good. No kind of excess opinion and all this kind of thing that can lead you around in spirals, but just like, this is some really good stuff that you can invest in and get up and running, and that's more important than wasting time on gear.
It's quite funny that you say that, because that's kind of what happened when I first started writing the book. I was kind of coming up with a million things that you could own, and then it's like, why am I doing this? You know, this is just ridiculous. It's just I could write a whole book about what gear you could get and sample libraries, and you know, that's kind of a whole other book in itself. But I thought let's just kind of, you know, from my personal experience, the stuff I've seen, or even the stuff that I own already, I thought it would just be helpful for somebody who was just getting started to kind of know what sort of things they could get, which wasn't obscenely expensive, but was kind of a good mid-range price. And, you know, stuff that you can just build up on along the way, because I think people think that when you're starting a business, You look at people like, I'm just going to use this name as an example. You look at people like Hans Zimmer or something, and obviously he's worked on massive movies, so he's able to afford crazy price synths and stuff. But it's taken him years and years and years to accumulate all that gear. It's not something that he's just got overnight. And that's sort of something that I wanted to get across, is that, look, this is going to take you a long time to accumulate all the gear that you will eventually own. So get it when you can afford it.
No, I think I really like your approach on that. And I think it really worked for me because it's, again, really, books like this, and I'm always constantly being asked by students what to recommend. And it ends up sometimes being an emotional thing. And I think you managed to steer clear of that. And it's just, this is some really good stuff. If you want to, definitely worth checking out the book, Notes to Notes. Again, nice pun there as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's the finance bit and, just general kind of business advice, I would say, about how to, general approaches to get work. And then there's kind of a more musical aspect at the end as doing orchestration. And
again, something that's often overlooked a lot is actually it's probably worth thinking about gear. It's probably worth investing more in books and education on business when you're starting out, rather than, a U87 microphone. It's going to get you a lot further down the path you want to be, is if you've got an idea of handle on that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think even just, being a musician is kind of, sometimes, I don't know how you feel about this, but certainly for me, I always feel like it's almost at the bottom of the pile sometimes, actually being a musician. Yeah. Most of it is just about running a business and trying to find work and people approaching you and all that sort of stuff that comes with running your own business. And often the musicality aspect is kind of 25% of it, maybe. It's a very small part of actually being a working composer or working orchestrator.
Yeah, it took me a long time to figure that out, I think. And as soon as it did, as soon as the penny dropped, it's like, I'm running a business here. Everything started to change for the better, in a sense.
Yeah.
Your focus. Yeah. And admittedly, it's annoying because you spend a lot of time when you'd rather be just sound designing or something like that. But it's a crucial part of it. Also, thanks for the quote in there. That's another reason to obviously buy the book. There's a quote of mine in there.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a great quote. It's a really great quote.
Anyway, so let's just take a little step backwards. Can you just tell us a bit more for people out there what your creative practice is, what your business is, and what you do?
So, yeah, I mean, essentially there are kind of three aspects to what I do in the music industry, and that is kind of writing production music for various different production music companies, orchestrating, which in kind of media music terms is basically taking a MIDI file and making it playable and, putting it into notation form, and so that orchestras and session players can sight read it at recording sessions. And copyist and music prep work, which is formatting the parts, making sure they're as readable as humanly possible so that nobody's wasting time at sessions, and printing the music and collating it all and making sure everything's in order, which sounds super easy, but it's quite an important part of the job, because it doesn't matter how good a composer or how good an orchestrator someone is if when they get to the session all the paper is in the wrong order and you just end up wasting time. So that kind of is the final bit of the process before everything gets recorded, printing.
So how did you get there? Was that a direction that you're always going in, or was it something that has kind of come along as a byproduct of being a composer?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because you basically hit the nail on the head. It is a byproduct. I mean, I definitely didn't set out to become an orchestrator. I just sort of fell into it and realized that I loved doing it. I worked for a guy called Simon Whiteside, who has become a really good friend of mine. He's a composer, orchestrator, and copyist as well, actually, which is probably probably explains a lot as to why I'm doing this. But I was kind of taken on under his wing as his assistant back in, it must have been around 2014. And from then on, he kind of just showed me the ropes. I basically got complete insider information, into sessions and how to orchestrate and all that sort of stuff that it's hard to kind of know about unless you're doing it. But unless you're doing it, it's difficult to get into, because how do you get started? But that was kind of my way in, was being an assistant and he would just kind of send me the odd cue here and there, kind of get on with that if you can. And then he'd say, well, you need to do this differently, or you need to do that. And then, that, you know, that's how you learn on the job.
I mean, this is something I'm constantly telling my students, in the fact that, you know, they'll come in with a very fixed mindset of what it is they want to do. And usually that's the kind of generic, I want to be a music producer view, and I want to sit behind an SSL console and move faders, and that's how I want to spend my day. And it's like, but that really doesn't exist. And also at the same time, there are a whole host of other aspects to this industry which are equally as exciting, and which all grow this, create this industry. And it's exactly the same in other industries, be it filmmaking or script writing. And just spending some time with someone, either as a mentor, as an apprentice, or just getting in there and having a look around, you can open up so many different doors that you may never have considered before. Yeah,
completely. And I think it's really useful to have a wide range of knowledge about the other jobs that are involved in the whole music making process, because when you're a composer, you don't really care about life as an orchestrator. You just send them the MIDI file. But I think when you're an orchestrator, you kind of know the things that kind of throw a spanner in the works for an orchestrator. So you're kind of doing your best to avoid those pitfalls, even when you're working quickly. And also just things that are annoying for a copyist that an orchestrator might do. So you know, the more kind of job roles you do, the more you kind of understand how to streamline things. I mean, working as a copyist has actually made my work as an orchestrator much faster, and vice versa, because, you know, working for other people, you see the sort of things they're doing and you sort of pick up, oh, that's a good little trick. But then on the other hand, you see things, you're like, right, that you never ever do that. Just that doesn't work, or it's just way too much information on the page. So you kind of pick up what is good and what's bad, and I think that's, you know, that's quite useful.
No, you use a really good word there. It's kind of like shortcuts, and it's something I think about quite a lot. It's one of the downsides of education. I probably shouldn't say that, being an educator, but you know, you go into an environment and a lot of the things that we're doing, be it audio engineering, mixing, they're just little tricks. It's just getting to the answer, getting to the place quicker, and not having to overthink things. Microphone choice, compressor choice, EQ choice, things like that. It's not rocket science. It's just knowing what is the best tool for the job and what are these little shortcuts through. And the same, I guess, applies to, well, it does apply to music writing. It's knowing how to, you know, do 4-part harmony would just save you a lot of time. Rather than plonking around on chords. You can do that, but
completely agree. And obviously in this line of work, it's all about working extremely fast. So you know, to some extent, it really doesn't matter how good of a composer you are if you take, you know, 2 weeks to write 1 minute's worth of music, because nobody's going to touch you with a barge pole. So you need to do things kind of at the speed of light, and without really thinking about how you're doing it. Which I think is where that draws the line between kind of classical music and media music, where, you know, classical concert works could take a year. Because that's no good in this line of work, when you gotta just plow through lots of different cues, you know.
I think it's the same, my perspective, either doing mixes or mastering, or even doing some session guitar work. It's not, you're not U2 being able to spend a year, you know, putting microphones in front of a guitar cabinet for a year and going, oh, that's the sound we want. It's like you've got clients in, they've booked 6 hours. We've got to get something out at the end of that 6 hours. So just got to focus on it. It's, you know, I think, again, sometimes a realization for students and other people out there, all aspects of the media industry. And I guess any job, you know, you don't want a plumber to come in and go through all his tools. You just want him to fix it.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah. Never thought of it that way. Yeah. Just imagine a plumber coming in and trying out, oh, not this spanner. I spent a lot on this spanner, so I've got to use it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, nobody really cares, do they? It's just doing a good
speed,
job and getting it done quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, going alongside that, what inspired you, or who or what inspires you to do this and motivates you?
I mean, I guess it harks back to my earliest musical memory, which is just, you know, wanting to play the piano, really. That's my instrument. And I remember I must have been like 7 or 8 years old or something. And I just really liked the sound of a piano, you know, hearing it being played in assembly and that sort of thing. And it took me until I was 13 to kind of get the courage to, you know, get lessons. So I'd get a 20-minute lesson each week at school, which was not a very long time at all, I'll tell you that. It was, you know, you kind of started it and it was basically finished, it felt like straight away. So I did a lot of practice outside. You know, I just started writing my own stuff, not film music-y stuff, just random kind of singer-songwritery tracks. And then, you know, I was doing music at school, actual GCSE lessons, and you kind of get in bands and stuff like that. And then I just sort of, I don't know where kind of the light switch kind of flicked, but then I sort of found my way into film and TV, kind of writing for that sort of domain. I think it was going to the Doctor Who proms in 2010. That was kind of the moment where I thought, actually, you know, because they had the picture up in the Albert Hall, in the Royal Albert Hall, when there was an orchestra playing along. And I just thought, that is amazing, like the combination of seeing the image and, you know, an orchestra playing against it. And it just really kind of hit me. So I thought, wow, that would be amazing to do that. And then I just sort of started networking, trying to email people. I found one of the piano players for Adele, Neil Cowley. I just found him on YouTube, and he had a video up at the time of showing him playing. He was kind of jamming Rolling in the Deep, literally at the session where he recorded the piano part. So I got in touch with him and was asking questions, and yeah, it's just interesting, all the sort of people you meet or talk to over the years, and then the more and more people I spoke to, they'll be like, oh, you know, maybe we can go for a drink and have a chat about, you know, how I might be able to help or stuff like that. And yeah, and then you meet someone who can open a door, and then that leads to opening another door, and before you know it, you're kind of doing it for a living. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing. Again, this is a more general podcast, but I'd say one thing I know in the music side of things is there seems to be a lot of generosity. I can't really speak for some other industries, but it feels a lot of generosity in terms of sharing experience and sharing knowledge within the community. That again, hopefully, is present within other communities, and it's a really useful tool to tap into, because people just. I don't. Yeah, it seems like you had the same experience. People just want to help you.
Yeah, I mean, there are a small percentage of people who kind of try and steer you off course, for lack of a better word, like, you know, saying, "Oh, it's too difficult. There's no money in it," and then you see them drive off in their Ferrari or something. It's like, oh, that's a bit bizarre. So you know, you have to kind of ignore that. But you know, most people are really willing to help you, like as you say. So you really have to take those opportunities. And you know, I went to one of John Lunn's recording sessions for Downton Abbey, and it was just that was kind of my first ever session. The first one was The Lady Vanishes at Air Studios, and then I went to a Downton Abbey recording session. And you just pick up so much just by watching what the orchestra does, and how the engineer communicates with the conductor, how the conductor communicates with the orchestra. And at that point, there's no pressure on you, because, you know, you're just sitting there, you know, you're not working on it at the time. So it's a great way to learn before you kind of jump in the hot seat yourself. So I had a couple of years of that before I was doing that myself. And yeah, as I say, you know, you're mixing with people in the studios, you get to know people, you see the same kind of people for different jobs, and yeah, you find yourself just settling into the industry, which is useful.
Have you ever felt the fear of being a freelancer?
Yeah, I would say it's quite kind of a natural move. I mean, I can't really imagine doing a normal job, you know, a sort of 9 till 5 thing. I don't think that would suit me very well. So yeah, I just sort of, fell into it, and it seemed perfectly natural to me. So
I mean, one of the questions I get quite a lot on the podcast, or just in life in general, about being a freelancer is, oh, isn't it scary? Isn't it difficult? It can be from time to time, but I think the way that the rest of the world is sometimes, and particularly things that are going on now with COVID, it's no more secure as anything else might be secure.
No, exactly my thoughts, what I've been thinking the last few weeks. It's always, yeah, if you talk to people and say you're self-employed, that they, like you just said, they kind of say, oh, isn't that it's quite dodgy doing that because you don't know when your next paycheck's coming in. But actually that seems to be the case at the moment with most people being made redundant. And as you say, no jobs are safe. I mean, who would have thought as an airline pilot that you wouldn't have a job? You would think that's a job for life. So,
I mean, I feel in my circumstances, sometimes it's a bit of a feast and famine kind of setup. And that's something that I've known because I've been doing it so long now, you kind of take that into consideration. So when there is a bit of a feast, you go, okay, well, I'm not going to go out and buy a whole bunch of gear or whatever. I'm just going to put that from the time when I know that it's going to be quiet.
Yeah, exactly. I think people get carried away, and kind of, without sounding like I'm harping on about my own book, there's a bit in there that kind of talks roughly about that, but in a different way in the terms of tax. You need to put that money away when you get paid, because
it's a pain at the end of the
year. So it kind of works in the same vein as this. You got to be careful, because you're probably not going to be working for 365 days of the year. You're going to have time. You're going to have a couple of weeks where there's not much going on, and then you'll be flat out for a month. You got to learn to ride those peaks and troughs. Unless you're someone like Hans Zimmer, who is just constantly busy and having to turn things down, then you're just going to have to learn that it's perfectly natural in this line of work to not have work at times. But then you can fill your time. There's always something to do in this job. That's what I think. There's always something to be getting on with, even if it's not necessarily something that you're getting paid to do. Because I always think, what was I particularly. Maybe I was slow at something on a particular job, and then I'll just, I'll work on that for a few days, and so that I'm quick at that by the next job.
I tend to refocus that from my mind is those downtimes are the times when you can do all those admin tasks of sorting out the website and doing a bit of marketing or promoting, make sure everything's in order, or as you said, writing a book. It's sometimes a good time to say, I'm going to put aside a block of time and focus on a project which may not generate me any income. Yeah,
exactly. It's all a risk. If you're kind of risk averse as a person, I'd recommend probably not going into this job, because there's always a risk. And like I say, you just have to be prepared when times are a bit slack work wise. So
which kind of leads me on to the kind of next kind of question I generally ask. What do you see, if any, are the barriers to a freelance lifestyle?
I certainly haven't faced any barriers personally. I mean, I guess, this is a whole topic in itself, and I could probably talk about it for years, to be honest. But I guess having a barrier would be a financial barrier. Yeah. If you come from an incredibly kind of poverty-stricken background, it's difficult to get going, because there's so much to buy, and it can take you a long time to kind of, as we were talking about earlier, build things up. If you come from a kind of privileged background, which, without sounding kind of stereotypical, a lot of people in this particular line of work come from what I would call a privileged background, and that makes it easier, because you've always got that to fall back on. If things get really tough, then you're kind of a bit safer than if you came from a really, really poor background.
I think it's interesting you say as well, going back to the kind of gear and initial outlay. I think one of the things about being in 2020, which might date this podcast, is there is actually now such a lot of good stuff that you can get for free. You can get DAWs for free. Spitfire Labs is a great free resource. So there are some things now which I guess can help you along your path. And I think even doing video editing and stuff like that, there's a lot of video editing software that you can get for free, or photo, creative stuff. Yeah,
and just resources. I noticed Lorne Balfe was giving away one of his Cubase sessions for Mission Impossible.
Wow.
So just for people to check out, like, what he's got going on in there. And also just scores, film and TV scores. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was saying, God, when I started out, there were no scores that you could kind of just check out. Whereas now, you can get those John Williams, Hal Leonard books. They're kind of concert scores of his work, and also just going to sessions. I've got a massive collection of scores that if I was working as a copyist or something, you kind of, hey, here's a little treat for you. You know, you get to keep that, and it's really useful just to kind of see how other people work, and there's so much to be learned.
Yeah, completely off topic as well. I think they're just things of beauty as well, just to look at them as a piece of art in its own right. There's something about music notation, a big score like that. Just, what would be your kind of dream gig then, or do you have it already? Are you living the dream, or is there something that you're moving towards?
I'm always a bit nervous about saying I'm living the dream because, you never know what's around the corner. So, I mean, there's always bigger heights to hit. I'm always thinking about what I can do that's bigger and better. So I don't think I'll be ever entirely satisfied with where I'm at, but I think that's just all part and parcel of the job. I always like to work on things that are just fun to work on. If it's just a fun job, like I worked on Lego The Incredibles, the game, and it was just a joy to work with the composer, who's also my friend. And we just work in a very efficient way. He gives me a lot of free rein to do what I want. No. And those are the gigs that you want, where you've got a lot of freedom and it's a good working relationship and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's a slightly, I guess, innocuous question there, because the more I think of it, it's like, ask me when I was growing up, I just wanted to be on stage with Iron Maiden. That was what it was all about. But that was kind of like the spur which has led me on to have a career in this kind of industry. And as you say, more and more now, it's just about keep working and enjoy, let's say, working on projects which you find interesting and inspiring. And again, inspiration doesn't have to come from a big name star. It can come from anyone, really. And you just get ideas that kind of kick you up the backside to keep going. I think that's what mine is.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned Iron Maiden, because that's just kind of struck something with my own head, because I'm quite a big fan of the band Travis and Keane. Just those two bands really just resonate with me. So I'd love to work with them at some point. Doing some string arrangements or something like that. That'd be awesome for me.
I've got my phone here. Just it's always constantly waiting for the call. That's one of them's ill and need me to take over, but it's not come yet.
You never know. You never know.
What do you think your greatest achievement? What kind of things have you been really proud of, or really landmark parts of what you've done so far? Because there's a lot you've got.
Wow. I mean, I would say the Gary Newman gig is up there with, orchestrating his kind of UK tour, which he did with orchestra. That's kind of up there for me. I just think, all those years that I was kind of listening to his music and thinking I didn't expect one day to actually be working with him. It's just things like that. You really don't know what's in the future, and that's what's so amazing about this job is nothing is impossible. So you can be listening to a band and thinking, oh, I'd love to kind of do some writing with them or do some orchestration or something. And then, 10 years later, you could be doing it.
Yeah.
You just don't know. So I'd say that's kind of up there. And the Lego, The Incredibles job was absolutely fantastic too. That's probably up there for me.
I was interested. You've worked with Anna Calvary. Saw her last year.
Anna Calvary, yes.
That must have been an interesting experience, because she gave an amazing show.
It's amazing, really, because she's got a kind of really mousy, sort of really quiet voice. And but actually, when she gets out on stage, she's like got this booming voice and just kind of crazy guitar shredding. And it's just amazing, really. And she's just a massive talent. So, it was great kind of doing arrangement stuff for her.
It made me question, it's like that. Sometimes you watch guitar playing and think, do I need to give up now? It's like, What advice would you give to other people on a freelance journey, or thinking about it, or starting off, or early stages?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you don't end up doing the thing that you kind of set out to do straight away, don't panic. Because if you set out to be a composer, it's unlikely that for the first few years you will be a composer, if that makes sense. You know, you're going to be doing other things. You might be preparing Pro Tools sessions, for instance, or you might be assisting, doing music editing, you know, helping them kind of cut music and help it fit the scene better. You might be doing those sorts of things. But actually, those are the things that open doors to actually doing what you want to be doing. So, you know, keep it diverse, stay diverse. Don't worry about not necessarily doing the thing that you have set out to do, because that will come in time. You know, don't rush, just be patient. It'll come to you. Just keep working at it. It's basically the last person standing, this job, you know.
That's good.
There are lots of people that you kind of meet along the way that just sort of seem to fade away. Maybe they weren't necessarily cut out for the job. The people that you end up working with 10 or 20 years later, those are the people that have stood the test of time.
I think that's a really, really important point, of that idea of, you know, not giving up, not fading away, because, you know, also by starting out smaller as well, you'll get a better idea. I think this is one that, again, some of the problems I come across teaching is students have kind of fed this idea of what it is they're getting into, but it's the highest level. It's not. You kind of start small, and then you might, if you spend all your time and all your effort thinking you're going to be starting at the top, you're just setting yourself up for failure. You can invest a lot of time and a lot of in money in saying, I'm going to be a film composer, I'm going to be a film director, without actually knowing what the job entails. I think that's one of the problems about education, is that you jump in full foot not thinking you're going to be doing this. And again, I've had this experience with people doing gigging or audio engineering. It's like when you actually get to do it, the reality is very different to what the actual job entails. And by doing what you've said, doing the smaller jobs, you can actually see all this stuff going on and figure out with a minimum amount of investment whether it's for you or not.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when people think about being a film composer, they see the more glamorous side of things rather than staying up till 3 a.m, rewriting an action cue because they've edited 2 seconds out of a scene and now nothing fits. You know, and you've got to do rewrites, and it's unlikely that your cue will be approved first time round. So it's those sorts of things that you don't necessarily know about until you're doing it. And then you realize, oh my God, there's just another dimension behind all of that. And that's not to say you won't enjoy it. It's just useful to know like you say, what you're getting into. It's useful to know what sort of things you're going to be doing, because often it's not just about writing music, it's communicating with people. And
I'm sure, again, there's probably 1,000 professions out there which you dedicate your life to, like being a brain surgeon, and you've spent 7 years learning to be a doctor and then a surgeon, and then you suddenly get into it and you go, you know what, I hate this. What am I going to do? And then you're kind of
terrifying.
Then you're kind of stuck. So again, by doing smaller jobs, seeing what's going on, you can get a good idea of what happens. I always think of the cafe example of there. We've all got kind of romantic, I have a romantic notion of opening a coffee shop and how amazing it would be. And then you think, if I look behind the scenes, it's like, no, it's probably awful.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You've got to know kind of the inner workings of what the job entails, and try not to look at it from a kind of rose tinted glasses aspect, because there are going to be things like in any job that you don't like doing. So don't expect it to be plain sailing perfect every day, because it's just not going to be like that. The majority of days will be amazing, and you wake up thinking, how on earth am I getting paid to do this, and how am I, making a living from this? But there are going to be days where you think, oh my God, everything's going wrong. So don't get disheartened on those days, because it's inevitable.
It happens to all of us, particularly with technology.
Exactly. Exactly.
Some days it's like technology is not where you just think, I'm just going to come back tomorrow. When you've sorted you've sorted out your issues, whatever they are. Anyway, thank you so much for that really insightful interview. Can you just let people know where they can find more information? Again, I'll put the links in the box below, but where can we find out more about you? Where can we get your book?
You can get my book on my website on the store page, and you can find out a bit about me also on my website and IMDb. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or add me on Facebook, and I'll be happy to chat to anyone who may want to ask me questions or may just want to have a chat.
One more time, fantastic, Tristan. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being a guest, and we will catch you later. Stay safe out there.
Thanks a lot, Neil.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much, Tristan, for your time. Really appreciated some amazing advice. Don't panic being one that's going to stick with me. Thank you again for listening. If you want to check out Tristan, do check out the links in the box below in the podcast. If you've liked this podcast, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review, obviously. That would be most appreciated. And all it's left for me to say is please do take care of yourselves out there. Stay safe, and we will catch you very soon.